Good morning and welcome to the Joint Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. My name is Seth Berry. I'm the House Chair, and I will be chairing this morning as my co-chair is otherwise occupied. We will begin as usual with committee introductions, and then we'll proceed with the scheduled work sessions and reports. So with that, I will ask members to introduce themselves and begin with Senator Vitelli.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Senator Eloise Vitelli. I represent Senate District 23, which is all of Saginaw County and the town of Dresden in Lincoln County.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Stewart.
Morning, folks. My name is Trey Stewart. I'm a state senator in District 2, which includes 51 communities in Aroostook and Penobscot counties, and I reside in Presque Isle.
Great. Representative Foster.
Good morning. I'm Steve Foster, representing District 104, which includes the towns of Dexter, Garland, Charleston, Exeter, and Stetson.
And Representative Grahowski.
Good morning, Nicole Grahowski. I represent House District 132, City of Ellsworth in the town of Trenton.
Great. Representative Kessler.
Good morning, everyone. Chris Kessler, representing part of South Portland and almost smidgen of Cape Elizabeth.
Representative Ziegler.
Good morning. I'm Representative Paige Ziegler from District 96 in Waldo County, the 7 towns of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Montville, Morrill, Palermo, and Searsmont.
Representative Cuddy.
Good morning. My name is Scott Cuddy. I live in the town of Winterport, and I represent House District 98, which is Winterport, Frankfort, Searsport, and Swanville.
And our newest member, Representative Sachs.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Melanie Sachs. I represent House District 48, which is Freeport and part of Pownell.
Great. Thanks all for joining us. And my name is Seth Berry. I represent House District 55, Bowdoin, Bowdoinham, most of Richmond, and beautiful Swan Island on the Kennebec. And we have with us, as always, our wonderful staff, our nonpartisan staff, our analyst, Lindsay Laxon, and our clerk, Jason Allerding. And you can always reach out to him if you are an interested party and want to be added to our email list or apprised of our weekly schedule and so on, or if you have questions about our proceedings. So with that, we will get started with our 2 work sessions for today as scheduled. And just a reminder that the work session is an opportunity for the committee to discuss internally what was heard during the public hearing from the public, any other information that we may have received, to hear a report back from our analyst on any correspondence that she has received regarding our questions during the hearing, and to review the technical nature of the bill so that we can make hopefully the very best decision. We are, as always, on YouTube. We will be promoting people to become panelists and to join us if the committee is interested in hearing from them, just to answer very specific questions, but not to rehear the bill. So with that, I'm just going to ask Jason, do we have with us and I'm looking at attendees. Do we have with us the Senate President, just in case he needs to speak to his bill or anyone else?
Yes, we do.
Okay, that's great. So if the committee wants to hear from the Senate President, keep that in mind, and perhaps he has others who can join us with respect to that bill. And I'm actually forgetting the number, but Lindsay, can you remind us the number and go ahead and present your analysis?
Excellent, thank you. This is LD 1814, an act to repeal the St. Francis Water District Charter and direct the town of St. Francis to assume, maintain, and operate the property of the district. So I'm going to send out my bill analysis now, and I can share my screen if you're ready.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, bear with me one moment. Okay, please let me know if you can see my screen. Excellent.
Yes.
All right. So this bill repeals the private and special laws that created the St. Francis Water District, and the bill directs the town of St. Francis to assume all property, liabilities, et cetera, of the district. We had a public hearing on this bill on January 6th, and we heard from President Jackson and Karen Jandro, who represents the St. Francis Water District. No one spoke in opposition or neither for nor against. And the proponents say that this essentially is an issue of resources. So transferring the water district responsibilities over to the town means that basically those responsibilities, the town is better served to take care of those issues. In preparing for this work session, I reached out to Ms. Jandro and spoke to her. And the intent of the district is to put this out to a vote. They wanted the town to vote on this measure as to whether to repeal the water district. They were thinking their town meeting toward the end of March. And then assuming that it's approved by the voters, they would move forward with transferring property, liabilities, et cetera, to the town. The bill as drafted doesn't actually do this that way. The concern might be that dissolving the water district prior to the transfer of assets and getting sort of winding down the operations of the district could lead to unintended consequences. And actually the approach that the district was intending to take is consistent with what water and sewer districts normally do when we see this type of wind down. Usually it's a two-step process. So we would have a law that essentially directs the district to sell or transfer their assets, liabilities, et cetera, to the town. The law directs the town to assume those liabilities and take on that responsibility. And usually there's language in, I mean, it's not required, but usually there's language in there to put this out to a vote. So there'd be a referendum clause. And then once everything's wrapped up, then a separate bill would come in simply as a technical bill to repeal the charter. So what that ensures is that the district itself is actually in existence and available and still has its statutory authorities to make sure that everything's wound down properly. The other thing I wanted to highlight was that in Title 35A, the PUC requires authorization for a public, or issues authorization for a public utility to sell or otherwise dispose of property. So that's often something that you'll see built into that sort of first step, is that the wind down process would be subject to PUC approval. And presumably that could also, deal with any unintended consequences that might come up. So those were the only things I noted on this. No fiscal notice required. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take any questions.
Great. Any questions for our analysts? And I see Representative Sachs has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to clarify, Lindsay, it feels like this bill requests step number 2, and it should have done step number 1.
Yes, this is sort of going right to step 2. And, it certainly is something the committee could choose to do. But given what the district's intent was, it sounds like they were trying to follow the standard process. Karen Jandro is here in case the committee has any questions. But if the committee was interested, I'd be happy to work with the district on kind of putting something together to follow that standard approach that sort of mirrors the intent.
That sounds like it'd be preferable, but I about a committee decision. And it sounds like it'd be helpful to have that confirmed with Ms. Jandro that they would like the committee to move in that direction as opposed to passing what's currently before us.
So I guess I do have a question for Ms. Jandro and potentially also for the sponsor. So Jason, if you could bring them both in, that would be great. And in the meantime, if there are other questions for our analyst, let's continue with those. Representative Grahowski.
Thank you. The question I had just looking at your bill summary was the 2-step process. It sounds like it would require a second action from us. It says repealed through a separate measure. Is it possible, or is there precedent for us setting up the second step if the first step is achieved so that people don't have to come back here and say, yep, we voted on it and now you have to take it away. We can just say, if there's an affirmative vote by X date, section is repealed. Would that be a solution?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm not sure if that's been done before. The examples that I've been looking at it seems pretty consistently to be that two-step process. And I don't know if I don't see why it couldn't be structured the way you're describing, but I'd want to look into that just, again, out of fear of unintended consequences.
Thanks.
On the other hand, it might help us to get to our goals that the presiding officers have set for us. So, there's always that. Ms. Jandro, sorry about the internal legislative humor, but could you speak to the district's intent and your understanding of the process as it stands now? It sounds like you'd be generally okay with the direction that our analyst has outlined, or perhaps even the Representative Grochowski just outlined. I just would like to hear that from you.
Definitely. We were with the understanding that we would bring this before you and you would accept or disprove it. And then we would bring this before our voters first, and then we'd have time to change everything over, like to sell things and to transfer. We just want the time. We don't want this all done incorrectly. We want the time to be able to do it right, and then to have the town take it over after the voters approve it.
Great. And again, that vote will take place when?
It's at the end of March.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another issue. We have like a town meeting at the end of March, and we'd like it to be on the ballot at the time, or we have the town voting, the referendum voting, like, believe it's like the few days before that. We prefer it to have the voting at the town meeting so that whoever's there, we can explain what we're doing before they get to vote. If it's on the referendum ballot, I'm afraid that people will not really get to understand it before they vote.
So there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem, it sounds like.
Yes, sort of, yes.
So I guess I would also just note that the timing is a little tricky because at the end of March, we're nearing our statutory adjournment date, and there's very limited time for the committee to take additional action, especially if it involves hearing another bill. And then you're talking about waiting, until next January at the earliest.
Yes.
If we do adjourn, sign a die in mid-April. So I'm pretty intrigued by Representative Grochowski's innovative idea, her thought experiment. So I guess I want to turn to Senator Jackson as the sponsor. And Senator, we can't see you, but perhaps you can join us. Oh, fantastic. Senator, as the sponsor, do you have what do you think about the idea of that Representative Grochowski floated to kind of enact something conditional that would allow the turnover to take place, if the town votes accordingly?
Well, thank you, Representative Berry, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Utilities and Energy, Senator Troy Jackson here. And as far as that proposal, I mean, I think that's, really great. Obviously, when the town reached out to me, they said that they were going to turn this over, or excuse me, the water district. I mean, obviously I don't schedule the hearings and, the timing, things like that. All I knew was we had to have a bill in to make that happen. Actually, I think you guys will be taking up something for the Caribou district that we were able to slow down for them to have their hearing. So that timing might actually work out. But this, if that's possible, what Representative Grochowski put forward, I think that's, a great thought and something that, I think would work really well. I mean, my parents, well, my parent lives in St. Francis. One of the selectmen I know them all very well. I mean, I think this is probably going to go through pretty easily, but obviously the timing is challenging. So if the committee chose to go that way, I think that would work perfect.
Great. Thank you, Mr. President. Any discussion from the committee, questions for any of those we've heard from? So, Blackson, if we were to go ahead and vote to create a provisional bill as described by Representative Grochowski, you could look into it, just double check that there wasn't anything unconstitutional or dramatically wrong or unanticipated. You could get back to us at the language review or at a subsequent meeting, and we could always re-vote it if there is something that you uncover. But it sounds, I mean, we certainly do enact laws that are conditionally effective in other instances. So it seems to me that this should work just fine. And I'm inclined to go with it personally, but I would defer to someone else to make a motion if they're so inclined. And I guess the motion would just be to, Lindsay, go ahead.
Just one other thing I wanted to point out, based on the timing issues that we've discussed, at least if you wanted to do sort of a bill that an amendment which tried to accomplish both steps in one, the committee may want to put an emergency clause on that to get this, because the referendum piece and the winding down elements, it sounds like the district would want that to be effective as soon as possible so they can get this on the ballot, get it to the voters.
Let it move forward. Absolutely. That's a great point. Any other discussion or motions? Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd move this bill ought to pass as amended with the amendments to reflect the timing considerations we have just talked about, as well as including an emergency preamble.
Great. And a second? Representative Cuddy. Okay, there's been a motion and a second to enact the bill with this conditional approach that Representative Grochowski outlined and an emergency preamble. Is there any other discussion? And Ms. Laxon, you're clear on the motion.
I just want to clarify that. So this
Okay.
will be essentially me working with the district to put together kind of the step one language that outlines the various steps, look into and hopefully draft something that basically dissolves the district upon the completion of these elements, so the district doesn't have to come back with a follow-up and then adding an emergency preamble. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Excellent.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we will proceed to a vote, and I will ask our committee clerk to call the roll.
Very good. So Senator Lawrence today is absent. Senator Vitelli?
Yes.
Senator Vitelli, yes. Senator Stewart?
Yes.
Senator Stewart is a yes. Representative Berry?
Yes.
Representative Berry is a yes. Representative Cuddy?
Yes.
Representative Cuddy is a yes. Representative Grochowski?
Yes.
Representative Grochowski is a yes. Representative Kessler? Yes. Representative Kessler is a yes. Representative Ziegler?
Yes.
Representative Ziegler is a yes. Representative Sachs?
Yes.
Representative Sachs is a yes. Representative Wadsworth is absent. Representative Grignon is absent. Representative Foster?
Yes.
Representative Foster is a yes. Representative Carlo is also not here. So we have I have 9 voting in favor of the motion.
Okay, 9 members having voted in favor of the motion and 0 in opposition. The Motion carries, and we will see the bill again on language review. Mr. President and Ms. Jandro, thank you for joining us, and I'm sure you'll be following this as it moves into its next stages. Congratulations. And Jason, if you could allow them to go back to their other business for the day, that would be great. We'll move on to the next work session. Thank you, Ms. Jandro. Great. And we will now go on to our next work session, which is for LD 1819, an act to define discrete electric generating facility. And Lindsay, if you could present your analysis, that'd be great.
Wonderful. All right, I will send this out. We also have a sponsor amendment. I received permission from Representative Grochowski to distribute this, so I'm going to send that out now. Actually, I'm just going to make sure the attachment is right. And it is. Okay. Excellent. I just sent that out, and I will share my screen and go through my bill analysis. And actually, I would ask the committee, which would make sense. My bill analysis does not reflect the sponsor amendment. So actually, if you'd rather I walk through that first or provide my bill analysis, does the committee have a preference? Or Representative Grochowski?
I'll ask the sponsor if she has a preference.
I think it's fine. I mean, we usually look at the analysis and then you could share what the amendment is and what part of the analysis it addresses. I think that would work.
Got it. Thank you.
That makes sense.
Okay. And please let me know if you can see my screen. Excellent. Okay. So this is LD 1819, an act to define discrete electric generating facility. This bill creates a definition of a discrete electric generating facility, and it amends the existing statutory definitions of distributed generation resources used for the purposes of net energy billing and distributed generation to incorporate a new definition of discrete electric generating facility. The bill defines a discrete electric generating facility as a facility that, one, is not located on a lot or parcel or more than one adjoining lot or parcel that was created by division after November 22nd, 2019, unless the PUC finds that the reason for the division was not to develop a discrete electric generating facility. It has to have its own interconnection and metering with investor-owned T&D utilities separate from any adjacent facility. Must be fenced separately from any adjacent facility and may only be connected to an adjacent facility by the T&D system. Must have its own generation components separate from any adjacent facility and is located on a lot or parcel or more than one adjoining lot or parcel where the total nameplate capacity does not exceed 5 megawatts. Discrete electric generating facilities are currently defined by the PUC by rule. We had a public hearing on January 11th and heard testimony across the board. The proponents put forward that the statutory definition will provide clear guidance for the market and address concerns about the existing PUC approach. And the geographic proximity approach that's currently taken by the PUC is inconsistent with other state solar programs. Opponents raised the issue that projects between 2 and 5 megawatts that do not meet the existing statutory requirements for net energy billing could be broken up into multiple projects under 2 megawatts and get in that way. And then concerns about conflict with the PUC rule definitions and the fact-based inquiries that the PUC has engaged in to date in issuing their advisory rulings on this. In terms of notes and issues, the committee, in looking at the proposed A11, the committee could consider providing some guidance for the PUC in making determinations about whether, about the divisions that may occur after that November date in terms of figuring out what was the primary purpose. In sub 3, the bill talks about facilities being fenced separately. I don't know if that terminology sufficiently clear. I don't know, would like a 1-foot fence be sufficient? I don't know if the committee would want to provide more guidance on that. And the other thing I wanted to flag is it looks like there may be a potential conflict with 3209A4 that relates to system size. So the bill basically in that subsection 5 limits a facility's nameplate capacity to 5 megawatts. And that's normally the standard, but currently in the energy billing section 3209A4 states that a distributed generation resource must be less than 5 megawatts, which is consistent with the bill, but it can be more. The nameplate capacity can be higher in the event that the distributed generation resource is located in a municipality with a municipal customer. So in that case, the nameplate capacity may be higher than 5. It's just only 5 megawatts can be used as part of the program. So I think we may have a slight conflict there. And no fiscal information is available. So why don't I stop sharing my screen and I will bring up the sponsor's amendment and we can talk about that.
That sounds great.
Bear with me one moment. Okay, so here is the sponsor's amendment, and this is designed to address the issue that was raised at the public hearing about facilities that don't otherwise qualify between 2 and 5 megawatts under the applicability section in existing law, breaking apart into smaller facilities. So the amendment amends 5 here, so it adds in, or in the case of a facility that does not qualify for net energy billing under subsection 7, that facility does not exceed 2 megawatts. So with that, I think I'll be candid. I looked at this briefly. I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around whether this addresses the issue. I don't know if others may be able to speak better to the concern about whether these larger facilities could break up into smaller facilities and qualify as discrete. Yeah, I don't know if others want to speak to that also.
Thank you, Lindsay. And I guess just to clarify for myself on that last point, subsection 7 would be the piece of statute that we enacted as part of LD 936.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah. Great. All right, so let's go to questions for our analyst or for the sponsor about the analysis and or the amendment. Just want to make sure everyone's clear on what we're talking about here. Okay, any discussion at all then? Well, I'll kick it off. So Representative Grochowski, I think since we initially heard the bill, there's been further discussion about solar and kind of where we're at. I am interested in, making things easier for solar developers, but I'm also concerned about, the potential for this avenue to be opened up, to the current approach to open with that the bill would take to kind of open the door a little too wide potentially. So you talked in your testimony about storage, and I just wanted to see if you would be amenable to looking at storage as an additional kind of safe harboring factor as an alternative approach. and Representative Growski.
Thanks. I was thinking you wanted a response from me, so I raised my hand. Good morning, everyone. I guess I would want to put a finer point on your your statement that this would be opening the door wider. I think what this bill is actually doing is making it clear how wide the door is open. I think there's a lot of confusion because of the PUC's multiple thresholds based on mileage, and then I think it's a 5-part and a 9-part test, which you can see at the bottom of my testimony. That has to be met, and some of it is, very concrete and easy to say yes or no, and other things are maybe a little less clear. So, I'm not trying to open the door wide. I mean, the point is these would have to be projects that have already been spec'd out in a lot of ways. We're not talking about new projects because we know we put limits on those things through LD 936. So what this bill was trying to do was just make it clear how wide the door actually is, and then get everyone away from just hanging out by an open door for weeks and months, trying to figure out whether they're in or out. So it's really trying to provide clarity as opposed to trying to increase, how many people are in, if you will. That's my reason for putting it in. Seems like there's been a lot of uncertainty for folks. I know of projects in my area that seemed like they fully met our original intention when we passed LD 1711 that, developers just walked away from because hanging out at the PUC trying to decide if you're in or out was just not worth their time. And I think that was frustrating for off-takers in my area who were interested in participating in this program. So that's like the bigger, the bigger statement I guess I'd make about the why of this bill. To your question about storage, I think, we have discussed and put some value, at least theoretically, around storage being a part of our system. And we have not gone so far as to create any kind of lucrative financial incentives for storage at this point. So I think there would be value in adding, I'm not saying eliminate what we've got here for definitions of what is and is not actually co-located, but additionally saying maybe you don't even pass all those points that are in this bill, but if you're doing storage, you're in because we see what value you bring to the functioning of the grid through doing that. So I'm not sure if it's an either or, it might be an and, in my view.
Mm-hmm. So we do have a number of those who testified among the attendees. If the committee feels it wants to hear from any of the stakeholders who are present. Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would ask our analyst in her report that she went through for us on this. I don't know, I don't recall. I thought there were some questions asked that we had looked for answers for during the hearing, but I may be wrong on that. I may be confused with another bill, but suffice it to say, and if indeed I did ask a question of the PUC at that time, or if I didn't, I'll ask it now, and that is what their thought was on how much this could extend the amount of net energy billing that would qualify. And with that question in mind, I will simply state that I'm quite concerned that as much time and effort as this committee put in to try to, and I'll use my language, reduce the damage done to the ratepayers by net energy billing when we pass 1711, that we continue to put bills in that will actually increase net energy billing opportunities in the state. And I will use the word conservative. I believe the PUC gave us a conservative estimate that even with present language in statute, they expect conservatively at least 1,000 megawatts of NEB qualifying solar to be paid for, to come online and be paid for before all is said and done. So my concern here is this is another bill that, from all I understand and what I read of it, and also what has the PUC and others have testified to, is that this will increase the amount of net energy billing, which will in turn increase the cost to ratepayers for solar, which, as with 1711, is not needed, because we know that the portion of 1711 solar megawatts that were allowed for under grid scale or industrial type sites comes in quite a bit lower. So I'm opposed to this bill. I don't see any way of making it look better or smell better, as long as it's going to almost absolutely increase the cost of net energy billing to ratepayers in the state of Maine. And if the PUC is online, and if they can answer a question as to what they think, as they looked at this, it might do to increase the amount of net energy billing allowed by statute, I would appreciate an answer to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Foster. And Jason, why don't you go ahead and bring in the PUC? I see Chair Bartlett, and we'll start with him. If he wants to bring in others from his staff, he can do so. And then we'll go to Representative Grochowski next. But first, just an opportunity for Representative Foster to have his question answered. And Chair Bartlett, were you first of all, did you hear the question from Representative Foster?
I did. Thank you, Chairman Berry, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here. We don't know with any precision how many additional projects will come in. I will say that it's pretty unlikely you'd be seeing this bill if it wasn't going to bring more projects in. So we fully expect there to be additional projects that would qualify. I do think it's important to consider that there's both the potential for some existing larger projects greater than 2 megawatts that would not qualify under the current program that might qualify with this change of definition. But it's also true that this would apply to smaller projects. So 2 megawatt projects would be subject to this parcel standard as well. So you could see a proliferation of clusters of 2 megawatt projects that are being built. So yes, I think you're right that there will be more projects that qualify and there will be more expense, but it's very difficult to quantify. And we currently have a DG stakeholder group that you have set up that is looking at issues of how the DG program could be modified or should be going forward. And in my mind, this is the kind of thing that should be considered in totality as part of what a future DG could look like. And that might be a good way to try to parse out what the real impact would be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Foster, did you have any follow-up question?
No, thank you. I think that Chair Bartlett has answered that as detailed, in a detailed way as he can at this time. Thank you.
You bet. And Representative Grochowski is next.
Thank you. I wanted to put a clarification on that question from Rep. Foster to Chair Bartlett. I think I'm only in a position to speculate what could or could not happen. It sounds like the PUC is in a similar position because we don't have really robust grid planning or communication happening. But I'm curious, I think something that we could have that would be a fact-based statement, and maybe you'd need to go back and ask the staff, is how many projects that did not get through either your 1 to 5 miles 6 criteria or your less than 1 mile 9-part test would have gotten through under this definition, because it may be the answer is 0 and that this test is a simpler way to part the waters, if you will. And that's not something, I've looked at a couple of your rulings, your advisory rulings, but I can't say how that would have turned out under this scenario, because I think it's possible that it's just a different way and a cleaner, more precise way of structuring the test. On the other hand, the PUC put all these criteria in presumably for some reason. what I worry about is that the cost of projects is actually going up because of the amount of time people are spending trying to figure out whether or not they're in or they're out. That also has a cost associated with it. Maybe it's minor compared to everything else. That would be plausible to me.
Charlotte.
I guess I would say the cost to the ratepayer wouldn't change, whether the cost of the developer changes or not. So there may be additional costs to developers, but there would not be additional cost to the ratepayers because you've fixed in statute what the compensation is or what ratepayers are going to be essentially paying. I think early on we had some requests for advisory rulings that had projects that were very close together that did not meet what our safe harbor would not meet it. And some of those might qualify under this definition. This is allowing projects to be very, very close together and potentially built in tandem. You know, what we've tried to do is interpret the various components of the statute, which seem to be putting some clear parameters that projects had to be of a certain limited size, under 5 megawatts. There was a generous subsidy, but to qualify for that, you not only had to be under 5 megawatts, but you had to be discrete. You had to be sort of a standalone entity. And our concern with the parcel approach, which we did consider when we were doing our rulemaking, was it could allow you to essentially develop multiple projects very close together as one single unit, using the same contractors, the same timing, the same investment capital. That is essentially, you're getting the same economies of scale you would get if you're building one large project on a single parcel, or many of the same economies of scale. And our view was that there were other avenues for procurement for that, and that you very intentionally put these parameters on these projects. So it's hard to know because we don't see projects unless they're coming in and seeking a safe harbor ruling or advisory ruling. We don't have direct visibility into all of the projects that are out there. We see what's in the queue, but in terms of how they all relate to one another and who owns them and those kinds of things, we don't necessarily have the visibility to be able to answer that question definitively. But again, I think it's unlikely that the advocates would be pushing this strongly if it wasn't going to allow more projects into the queue, into the program.
Thank you. Any follow-up, Representative Grozowski?
Thank you. And I would say I think that's a good point regarding, why anyone would be promoting this legislation. On the other hand, it's been portrayed to me that the reason that we're seeking this clarity is not just for this program, but also for anything going forward. And so to your point that the DG stakeholder group might be the right place to do that if they could, actually provide us any language to work from, I would be more encouraged that that could be an outcome of that group. But I would just ask, I think the reason that I've heard is that no other state has taken this approach and that we're sort of an outlier in the way we've been approaching this. And I wonder if you could comment on if that's actually true. I assume you looked at what other states were doing. My impression was it's not just about trying to fit a couple more people, like squeak them under the wire, but is about to rectify what is seen by the industry as a real aberration from policies elsewhere.
So I think that there are a lot of aspects of this program that are different than what other states have. When we were looking at it, there wasn't sort of a one size fits all. There wasn't a single approach that was used. Different states have approached this differently. And I would also point out that about 2/3 of the projects are in the CNI Terra program, and that is a very unusual program from the way Maine is structured compared to what other states have. So yes, it is different than what other states are doing, but I don't think there's a common approach. And even if there were, there's enough unique about the statute that it's hard to say how to reconcile all the differences and commonalities.
Great. We'll go to Representative Sachs next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bartlett, thanks for being here this morning. Does the amendment offered by the sponsor alleviate the initial concern that you had in your testimony around what you termed as gaming the system?
It redresses one aspect of gaming, and it certainly is an improvement. But I think the core concern is still that a single, the developer or entity or funders could come in and develop a large facility and break it down. So this removes one piece of that. That can't be on adjoining parcels. But you could still have an access road, a common access road that is touching different parcels that is allowing you to essentially have to treat it as a single facility and build it all at the same time and to get those economies of scale. And I think the reason that you might be concerned about that is we've seen in our regular procurements projects as small as 10 megawatts that are able to bid in to a procurement at a few cents a kilowatt hour. So there is a real question of the need, whether these projects, when you start bundling them together and getting larger in size, whether those really need the level of subsidy that a true discrete standalone project would need.
Representative Sachs, any other discussion?
No, I'm puzzling through, and I wasn't able to find, Mr. Bartlett, how many projects did not go through under the current regulations. And I wonder if that is available, because the sponsor is stating one of the purposes of this legislation is to bring clarity for developers so they can decide and have fairly understandable regulatory guidelines around what will work and what it won't. So under these guidelines it sounded like in your testimony that the PUC is saying that this process you've put forward is as efficient as it should be and helps to keep from gaming the system. And so is there room to state, or is there documentation or data somewhere that talks about how many of these did not go through under the current, and would this bill help move that forward?
So I can't answer that precisely because a project doesn't ever have to come in to seek approval for us to go forward. So the projects that make decisions, developers that make decisions to go forward and not go forward, that we never see. We did initially have some early advisory rulings that were denied, that we sort of said these didn't qualify as discrete generating facilities. That was a small number. And what we heard from the industry was that they needed more clarity. They wanted more predictability. And we put together the safe harbor to provide that. And since we put that safe harbor in place, we've gotten a number of advisory rulings, and it's really about getting the confirmation that they meet the safe harbor. So once we put that in place, that seemed to smooth things out. We were not getting, we stopped getting requests that didn't meet it, or that things were very, very close together. And instead, we were getting requests to sort of affirm that based on the facts presented, that they meet the safe harbor. So it seemed that developing that safe harbor sent a very clear signal of what was allowed and what wasn't, and solved the problem about this confusion about whether they could go forward or not. I'm sure that there are projects that are much closer together than what the safe harbor allows that could go forward under this, but we don't know the number because there's no requirement that anyone come in to seek approval to move a project forward.
Thank you.
So I'll just share my own concern about kind of what has become evident in the discussion around the bill, and that is that I do prefer, having voted for LD 1711, I do prefer that projects that are over the NEV limits that we've set, whether it's 5 or going down to 2, if they are over, that they be, they play by the normal 3210 rules. And I do have a hard time, seeing myself voting for the bill the way it's currently configured. But I do want to know, Chair Bartlett, your thoughts on storage, because it seems to me that we really need urgently to do more around storage. And we've been talking about it for a long time and we haven't taken any action, to speak of. I'd like to kick that along, and I would just, off the cuff, like to ask you if we were to make storage, let's say it's storage that is, equivalent to the capacity of the combined arrays, an additional safe harbor allowance, would that address some or most of your concerns and the commission's?
I just think it's a separate issue. It's a separate issue. I mean, I think we are going to eventually need more storage on the system. The DG stakeholder group is certainly looking at that as well, and might be another place to really suss out what the best policy is. I wouldn't say the system is at a point now where we desperately need the storage in order to support what we currently have, but we will eventually. I mean, as you build out more and more distributed generation, you want to make sure it's either used or saved for future. So I just think it's a separate issue.
And you don't see any particular levers that this committee could pull in the near term if we want to encourage storage more immediately? Because it strikes me that this is it's clearly, there's clearly an interest in, streamlining the approval process and obtaining safe harbor provisions as easily as possible. So, just opening that up a little, you're suggesting this might not be the right place to do it, but if not now, when? If not us, who?
Fair enough. Let me think about that and take it back. It makes me nervous to try to come up with policy on the spot. So let me think about that.
I'm known for that. And I appreciate the interest in slowing it down and getting it back to us. So I am very interested in pursuing that. And, personally, I'm not prepared to vote for the bill at this time, but, I'd be happy to entertain any kind of motions, a tabling or further discussion or something else. And Representative Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that this bill be moved ought not to pass.
Okay, Representative Foster has moved ought not to pass. Is there a second? Representative Carlo, you're seconding the motion?
Yes.
Okay. And is there further discussion?
I move to table.
Okay, Representative Grochowski moves to table. Is there a second? Representative Ziegler seconds that motion. That is non-debatable, and we will proceed to the tabling motion with the ought not to pass motion on the floor. And Lindsay, if you could just note if the tabling motion does prevail, that we still have that underlying ought not to pass motion before us, that would be great. So we'll go straight to a vote, and we'll just do it by a show of hands on the tabling motion. So all those in favor of tabling, please indicate by a show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wait, 1, 2, 3. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. And those opposed. 1, 2. All right, 6-2. So the motion to table carries. The ought not to pass motion is still before us when we come back to it, and we will reschedule this for another time. That concludes our work sessions for the day. Thank you all. And I look forward to the additional time to come up with creative solutions to the problems that this bill brought to us. And we are at almost quarter past. So I'd like to give the committee a chance to take a brief stretch break, and we will come back for the remainder of today's schedule at 10:25. So Jason, if you could put up 10:25 for the general public, that would be great. And please turn off your video and audio, and we'll see you all at 10:25. Senator Lawrence, you're back.
I am back, but if you wouldn't mind keeping going, I'd be very, very happy with that.
Okay, well,
Where are we at?
we are done with our 2 work sessions and just getting ready for the presentations of reports.
Okay. You want me to do those, or are you comfortable doing them, or what do you want to do?
I don't mind doing them. That's fine if you you
Yeah.
have stuff to catch up on.
I do. I have like 14 phone messages here and the usual. So how did the work sessions go? Did we actually vote anything?
We did. We voted Senator Jackson's bill, and we tabled the other one.
Okay. So I should get on with Jason and just record my votes.
Yes.
Okay.
That'll be great.
Is he on right now?
We are still streaming live, and
okay.
I'm going to ask that members rejoin with video, so I see enough of us to give the special guests a proper audience. Fantastic. And Jason, if you could promote whoever it is from the PUC, maybe Derek Davidson, who will be presenting the report today, or perhaps Harry Lanfear, or maybe just both of them. That would be very helpful.
I believe we have Derek Davidson presenting first.
Great. Okay.
It's okay with you, Seth. I'm just going to mute myself.
That's fine. Okay. And hopefully a couple other members will be able to rejoin us as we go here, but of course it's all recorded, and I'm sure that members who aren't able to be here live will tune in later. So I want to welcome Derek Davidson from the Consumer Assistance and Safety Division, the director of that division at the Public Utilities Commission, to present the Ratepayer Assistance Report. And Derek, we appreciate your joining us to do this.
Happy to be here, Representative Berry. Thank you. Good morning, Senator Lawrence, Representative Berry, and other members of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. My name is Derek Davidson. I'm the director of the Consumer Assistance and Safety Division here at the PUC. And I'm here this morning to present the Commission's Ratepayer Assistance Report. During its 2021 session, the legislature enacted an act regarding the Arrearage Management Program. And Section 3 of that act stated that the Commission shall consider, in docket number 2021-61, which was an inquiry that we had opened to explore options for expanding eligibility for Maine's electric low-income assistance program, we were to consider proven global best practices to assist low-income ratepayers, including but not limited to the use of lower tier rates for customers based on income.
And Derek, if I could just interrupt you for one moment, did you have did you want to present a slide deck, or is that not part of the plan today? Not that you needed to.
I did not plan on that.
Okay, that's fine. So our analyst has just emailed to the committee and also to interested parties the full report. It was not previously on our website, but I just wanted to make sure people knew that the report is in your inbox. It's been bumped up in your inbox. And one other just preliminary I should have mentioned earlier, Derek, is would you like to take questions at the end? I think I'm inclined to just ask people to note their questions and let you get right to the end of it. And
that sounds good, Representative Berry.
All right, sounds good. We'll do it that way. Please proceed.
Okay, so the act basically required us to consider proven global best practices in our examination of expanding the low-income assistance program for electric ratepayers in Maine. The act also requires the Commission to provide to this committee any information or decisions that we made in relation to the low-income ratepayer assistance, and what steps we were taking as a result of that inquiry. And finally, the act also stated that the committee may report out a bill during its second session based on information and recommendations provided by the commission in this report. So a little background, in March of 2021, the commission opened docket 2021-61 to seek comment on a number of issues related to a request that the commission had received from AARP of Maine for an emergency rulemaking proceeding to authorize a pilot program to significantly expand the participation in Maine's electric low-income assistance program. Commission staff we did open that inquiry, and commission staff discussed the language of the act, as well as other issues that were related to AARP's request with stakeholders at 2 separate stakeholder meetings. The commission also reviewed information on low-income assistance programs offered in other New England states, as well as other states nationally, and solicited written comments from stakeholders on proven global best practices to assist low-income ratepayers with paying their electric bills. Commenters generally agreed that they were not aware of any proven global best practices in this area, but they did suggest that the commission review other states' electric low-income assistance programs. AARP provided a nice summary of the other New England states programs, and the commission also received a summary of other electric low-income assistance programs that are in operation across the country that was compiled by the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. So using information collected in the inquiry, the commission opened a rulemaking this past January 11th to consider amendments to expand Maine's electric low-income assistance program. And specifically, the commission is proposing to expand eligibility to include all means-tested programs administered by DHHS in the eligibility. Currently, the current program operates off of LIHEAP. So if customers are determined eligible for LIHEAP, then they are de facto eligible to participate in state's low-income assistance program. What this expansion will do, it will also include all of the means-tested programs that are administered by the Department of Health and Human Services, Medicare, TANF, food stamps. And we've estimated that by expanding the program to include means-tested programs administered by DHHS, this will most likely double or more than double the number of households in Maine that are eligible to participate in the electric low-income assistance program. The commission's had a number of discussions with DHHS, as well as Maine State Housing Authority regarding administration of the program, and has been exploring potential ways to address limitations on the ability of DHHS to share certain information with the commission, as well as Maine State Housing Authority and the utilities due to confidentiality issues. So that has created a complexity that we're examining in the rulemaking process. And finally, the report concludes that at this time, the commission does not have any recommendations for legislation, but if the rulemaking process reveals that statutory changes are necessary or appropriate, the commission will bring this matter to the committee. So that concludes my summary of the report. And at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Director Davidson. And are there questions from the committee? Representative Kessler.
I thank you very much, and good morning, Derek. So could you just rephrase what I thought I heard you say, which was regarding expanding eligibility to include folks who are going through DHHS? You are currently working on a rulemaking to include that as the criteria?
Yes. Yes, the current rule specifies LIHEAP eligible customers are eligible to participate in the program. And one of the things that the rulemaking is doing is it's expanding that eligibility to also include, in addition to LIHEAP, any means tested program administered by DHHS.
Okay. Thank you. I wanted to just flag for the committee that this sounds like a recurring theme as we were looking at eligibility for low-income programs with Efficiency Maine. That same issue with the DHHS exists, and so I feel like we really should be targeting that particular issue and working on that collaboratively for sure.
Thank you, Representative Kessler. Yeah, I could not agree more. Senator Vitelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, Mr. Davidson. My question sort of builds off Representative Kessler's question, actually, and that is, since there are these issues around confidentiality associated with getting information from DHHS, for example, are there proposals within the rule for education and outreach for reaching people beyond just getting information from an agency because they've applied for other forms of assistance? It seems to me that this has been an issue we've heard about in other areas, that people just don't know that these benefits exist, that this help is out there. So what have you thought of and is included in the proposed rules that can advance public outreach and education? And I have a suggestion for you in addition to that, but I'll wait to hear your answer first.
Okay. So yes, because of the confidentiality challenge with DHHS, what the rule has proposed is that, and DHHS has been very gracious in offering this. They have offered to annually send a letter to every one of their clients that is eligible to participate, to one, let them know they're eligible to participate in the program, and that informs them to contact the utility to enroll in the program. And so each of the customers that should receive a letter, and what we're envisioning is that hopefully this letter will contain all the information that the utility will then need in order to properly enroll the customer, the customer's account number, a place to put for the customer, to write in their account number, and then the customer's name and address, and information on contacting the utility. So, and that will be done on an annual basis. So that's going to be the primary way that customers will be notified, one, that they're eligible, and two, on what they need to do to enroll. We also do expect that utilities, when they're dealing with customers in general that are having problems paying their bills, that they inform them of not only the low income assistance program, but also the arrearage management program.
Great. If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
That's great to know. I think that's a good first step. I would just like to suggest that another way that people can be reached is through their tax filing. The cash coalitions every year reach out to people all over the state to help them file their taxes, and in that process also share with them information about other resources, whether it's homeowners assistance or child care tax credits, other ways that they can better build financial stability into their households. And this would be another opportunity, I think, and a good one to reach more individuals on this program. AARP, as it happens, is one of the providers of this free tax assistance. So I'm sure they would be happy to participate in spreading the word about these programs. So thank you for this effort.
Director Davidson, the enabling statute here did require a look at lower income tiers for rates and rate making, which I'm not aware is practiced anywhere else in the US, but I do know that it happens in other jurisdictions. And can you just speak a little more to any discussion that occurred along those lines pursuant to statute?
Sure. Right now, Maine's program does have tiered rates. There's basically two different types of programs being offered in Maine right now. Central Maine Power offers a percentage of income program, And what they do is they base the household is obligated to pay between 4 to 5% of their annual income towards electricity. That's a general number across the country that's been determined as affordable. And they basically receive a benefit for anything above that amount. So CMP's program is very specific to providing what the customer essentially needs to make their electric bill affordable. The rest of the utilities use the commission's model. We have developed a model that has 4 different income levels, and it takes into consideration the average income level for that customer class, as well as the average usage of electricity, as well as the utility specific rates. And it establishes an average benefit amount based on those factors for each customer. What we have done in this rulemaking is we've retained those structures to ensure that the lower income people get a higher benefit and to receive the assistance that they need. It's a more administratively burdensome process than just a straight discount, but it does ensure that different levels of income are provided with different benefits pursuant to the need that exists for them. So we have retained that structure in the proposed rule.
Thank you. That's a very helpful clarification. And I think I know the answer to this, but just to make sure, am I correct that these lower tiered approaches are paid for by socializing the costs among other customers? There's nothing being required of the owners of the company, the shareholders of the utility, correct?
Well, it's the funding for the program is embedded in distribution rates.
Yep. Okay. So it's socialized, paid for by other customers, and the information which is collected by the utility about the customer's income status is what exactly?
What the way the current program works is the cap agencies collect the financial data. And so they collect them as part of the LIHEAP process. That's why LIHEAP was originally chosen, because there's a very well-established process that's easy for consumers to use. They enroll at the local cap agency. The cap agency reviews their income, determines what percentage of the federal poverty guideline their household falls at, and then relays that information to the utilities and instructs them at what benefit level the customer is going to basically be enrolled into the program at. With the proposed rule, it's going to continue working that way for LIHEAP eligible customers. For DHHS customers, DHHS is going to put on the letter that is sent to each family what level of the federal poverty guideline that household falls at. Also, they can also include the actual amount that the household is receiving has for income on an annual basis. The utilities will then use that to determine what the benefit level for the customer will be.
Got it. And if I have an arrearage, I might qualify for AMP, provided that I haven't run out my eligibility and missed a payment. So in that instance, would the percent, speaking to the CMP program, would the percent of income apply to my current monthly bill or my arrearage as well?
It would apply to the current monthly bill. The way the CMP's program works is they look at what's the anticipated usage for the household for the upcoming year. And they usually base that on historical use if they have that information. And then based on that estimate of the upcoming year's usage, what's going to be the cost based at rates that are in effect when the customer is enrolling. And they estimate what the total annual cost is going to be. And that's how they use that number to calculate the benefit.
Great, thanks. I do have a couple more questions, but I just want to turn and see if any other members of the committee want to jump in. And I think these will be relatively quick. So Director Davis said we wanted to schedule this, as quickly as possible, given that a lot of customers are experiencing energy cost sticker shock. There's been, big uptick in fossil fuel prices, and that's impacted electricity rates as well as other energy costs. So I think the first question that I have for you in that is, are you seeing at the Consumer Assistance and Safety Division an uptick in concerns, complaints, cases relating to the recent, we had double-digit increases in the T&D rate back in August for CMP and for November for Versant, and then on top of that we saw the supply rate increase. So are you seeing an uptick?
We are seeing an uptick in calls with customers that are concerned about the amount of their bill. Mm-hmm. and we have, let them know basically what the cause of that increase is, primarily standard offer. And we have had a fair amount of questions from business customers asking about what their options are. So we certainly have seen an uptick.
Got it. And what should we tell our constituents? I think we're all hearing from people. Obviously, you don't have all the silver bullets and magic wands to solve the problem for us, but based on your expertise, based on your work in this arena, especially for our low-income constituents, what is the best recommendation that you can offer us to offer to our constituents who are concerned and struggling?
Good question. So, I think the first thing what we would ask when a customer calls us is, if they're having trouble paying their bill, have you looked into, are you eligible for the low-income assistance program? Are you eligible for the arrearage management program if you're behind on your bill? Are you struggling to pay your bill? We might put them on a payment arrangement, or ask that the utility put them on a payment arrangement. So that's probably the first set of questions we would get into with them. Also, make them aware that there is a competitive market for electricity. Now, they'd be going to the same market that's just recently increased in standard offer. So, we temper that advice and say, it may be a while before, there's the CEPs can compete, because they're buying electricity from the same place that the standard offer providers are. But at some point, prices may come down at the wholesale level, so competitors might be able to make competitive offerings with the standard offer. So, they might want to pay attention to that. And then we also talk about efficiency. Something you can do right now is reduce the amount of electricity that you're using. And, here's some resources, and Efficiency Maine, and we refer them to Efficiency Maine's website, give them their consumer hotline. That's the advice that we're giving currently.
Thank you. Other questions on the low-income ratepayer work for Director Davidson? Okay, seeing none, we appreciate your coming before us to update us on this important work, and please keep us posted on how we can support it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
And we do have another report also from the PUC, and I believe this will be Director Lanfear perhaps presenting it. Jason, perhaps But if you could just promote whoever you believe is going to present it, that would be great. And this is a report pursuant to, I believe, LD 251 last year. Director Lanfear, welcome. And am I correct that you're the Johnny on the spot for this one?
I am indeed. I am indeed.
Okay.
Senator Lawrence, Representative Barry, and distinguished members of the committee, let me attempt to share a PowerPoint. We do that a lot here, but we use Teams. So I'm going to attempt to do that, and share screen looks like the right thing to click on. So
got it.
So you can see that okay?
We can, and we are also we're seeing the there you go. Whole screen is better.
All right, great.
Yep.
Excellent. I'll jump right in. I've got 37 slides. No, I'm teasing.
Okay.
I've got 5.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll try to be fairly short. So this act really did 2 things, changing kind of the methodology for how assessments are calculated. And that first thing was to separate out the investor-owned utility costs and the consumer-owned utility costs. And then the second piece was to use a 3-year rolling average of revenues for all utilities. And so those are the 2 major pieces that changed. And I'll kind of walk through the impacts of that. We did send you the report on the 15th, and I think your analyst just sent it out to the entire committee. It's also on our website. So basically, the results were as follows. In the electric utilities, the IOUs assessments in total increased about $90,000. And of course, on the COU side, there was a corresponding decrease. And I'll get into some of the details of the numbers. And then on the water utility side, the kind of very similar thing, only the numbers are a little bit lower. 50,000 increase spread across the IOUs, and then a corresponding decrease of 50,000 for the COUs. The communication utilities really, the impacts there are a result of the 3-year rolling average. Those are the numbers there. If you look at the details, the attachment to the report, you can look at all those utilities. Several of the assessments are very small, so when you see those dramatic increases, you might think that's crazy numbers, but some of those assessments are, those utilities are very small, and the increases are large. And then the Casco Bay Island Transit District, really no significant change, basically the same number. The one thing I did want to point out, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in a second, is that this is a 4-month look. After this law was enacted, we started tracking the cost as directed. And then, we had to start preparing the report and the analysis. So really, we were only able to factor in 4 months into this. So it may or may not be indicative of how, the assessments will ultimately look after we have a year's worth of data. So on the electric utility side, remember I just mentioned there was a $90,000 impact. So you can see the 2 that's the gray line, shows you the 90,000. So the 2 investor-owned utilities, in total, their assessments went up 90,000. Versant was 144,000. Ironically, CMP down 54,000. Again, some of that's a function of the 3-year revenues as well. And then you can see all the COUs went down by, I think the lowest was 23% reduction, but in total, on average, about 35%, all the consumer-owned electric utilities. So you can see those percentage reductions there. So I'll go now to water utilities. I didn't give you quite as much detail here because it would have been several several slides, so I chose not to do that. But you can see again the difference here is it was 50,000. So all the investor-owned water utilities in total had a $50,000 increase, and you can see utility by utility how that $50,000 was spread. I should have said, I'm sorry, the revised column is the new methodology, and the current column is the way kind of we're doing it now prior to this legislation going in place. I should have pointed that out. Sorry about that. The other thing I guess I would just say here is, you know, when you think of investor-owned utilities, you might have a thought that those are very large utilities, and in the case of the electric IOUs, they are. In the case of water IOUs, there are some very tiny utilities here. So I think you can see, you know, Freiburg, Machias, you know, Keyser Falls, Heartland. These are very, very small utilities. So I just wanted to point that out for clarity. So then on the my bullet at the very bottom of the slide is for the water COUs, and again, in total, they would have seen a reduction of $50,000 if you look at all of them as a group. However, some of those COUs did see an increase, and again, that's really driven by the 3-year average. And I've listed those at in the bullet there. Those water utility, the COUs that saw an increase. So that's really it. Just kind of concluding quickly, again, on the electric side, it was a $90,000 swing IOU to COU, and then on the water side, it was 50,000 instead of 90. And again, just emphasizing that several of the water IOUs are small, and they will see a significant increase. So we just wanted to point that out. And then again, all of that tempered by the fact that this is really just 4 months of data. So what would 12 months do? You know, that might be a question. We really don't know, and that's kind of the final bullet. You know, our workload is driven heavily by the cases that we receive, whether it's a consumer-owned utility or an investor-owned utility. And based on that workload of those cases, that, you know, significantly drives all of these numbers. So again, this was a 4-month snapshot of time, and a 12-month snapshot is going to be different. And then every year is going to be different. You know, the breakdown of the COU and IOU cases really does change from year to year. So it's hard to predict what could happen, but certainly, you know, there will be fluctuations, and those could be significant. And again, for those very small water utilities, or any small utility, you know, if your assessment goes up, you know, thousands of dollars, you know, that could ultimately lead to that utility saying, geez, I need a rate increase. Some of those small utilities just don't have the reserves and other things that, you know, they're just small, and they just don't operate that way, and they can't financially afford to. And so I just wanted to note that for the committee. So that's everything. I can leave this up if there are detailed questions about, you know, the specifics of the impacts to electric or water, if you'd like, or I can take it down. Your choice.
Thank you very much, Director Lanfear. And I think go ahead and take it down, and we can, the committee can remember what was on the slides. It was short enough, or if you need to refer back to it, it's also in our inbox. The information you have so far with those 4 months is very helpful, and I would just want to see if the committee has any questions, and if not, I have a couple myself. Great. So I guess one just clarification that I want to make at the top is that for those that perhaps, well, I guess everyone here was on the committee when we enacted it. So to refresh our memory, the public's memory, the purpose here was kind of a cost causation approach, where the business model that any given community chooses for itself for its utilities has associated costs, and some of those costs are regulatory. Some types of utilities cost a little more to regulate. So that cost causation logic is essentially what's at work here and what we're beginning to see. But I think it is only a beginning, and I just want to clarify a couple things. So just first, right off the top, those 50% increases or 30% increases, Director Lampier, you're speaking about just the increase to the regulatory assessment, the amount that customers are asked to pay for the regulatory exercise, correct?
Absolutely correct.
So nobody's seeing a 30% increase in their rates or a 50% increase in their rates because of this. All right.
No, I was just kind of pointing out that a smaller utility, if they saw those increases, for a few years or maybe even 1 year, might have to request a rate increase, but it wouldn't be the same percentage rate increase, obviously. That's an excellent point.
Yeah. And maybe at some point we can understand a little bit better what it looks like on the average person's bill, in Keyser Falls or wherever. But the other question I have is relating to that is the 3-year rolling average. Can you speak about how, you've got 4 months of data. How might a 3-year look back potentially smooth or not smooth the impacts that we would expect to see?
A 3-year look back on what? I guess I'm not exactly sure of your question. Sorry.
Well, I think a portion of the bill relates to kind of a 3-year look back and a spreading of the fluctuation that would otherwise occur. Maybe you can just describe how that mechanism works for us and how it might help to smooth the impact that a ratepayer would see.
Yeah, understood. So, yeah, I think conceptually, the 3-year revenue should, I think at a high level, should, kind of smooth the impacts of the assessments. But as you saw, and in the detail of the report, like on the communications utilities, that's probably the best example where the swings were fairly wild, up and down, and that basically entirely driven by the 3-year average. So, some of those utilities do have revenues that are cyclical and they go up and down from year to year, and so there would be some smoothing there, but clearly there are significant impacts to those utilities, and that's the same for some of the other utilities as well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And maybe you can put a finer point on for sort of worst case scenario with the telecommunications piece. I think the example given was 450 something percent. What does that look like to a consumer? And I'm, if you want to name the location where that's occurring, please do, but I'll leave that to your discretion. What are people experiencing in that?
I think I'm going to actually. I see. It looks like it's Lincolnville Networks. I'm on page 7 of the report, attachment 2. That was the 492% increce, and it's it was a difference of $1,600. So how that gets relayed into their rates and what that exact impact would be, I don't know. But again, I think all of those ups and downs in the communications area were because of that 3-year average.
And had we not enacted the 3-year average, would there not be greater fluctuation?
Potentially. I really do think it is a utility by utility situation. So, for example, if you were a utility and your revenues went up fairly significantly year over year, you're going to see a larger piece of the assessment, all else being equal. So it works. I think it would work out both ways. But if conversely, if the 3-year average grabbed, if year 1 of 3 was an outlier year, that's going to factor into your 3-year average, if you see what I mean, and that could have a different impact. So it really kind of is on a case-by-case basis. Hard to, for me anyway, it's hard to make a generalized statement to your question, but it's a good point.
Thank you. Representative Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Harry.
Morning.
I wanted to just understand, so it didn't explain in the report why IOUs were up and COUs were down specifically. Might you be able to touch on the reasons for the increase in those costs versus the decrease for COUs?
Sure. So basically what we had been doing historically is the cost to a particular area were kept into that area. So let's pick on the water utilities. You know, you have investor-owned water utilities and consumer-owned, and basically all the costs that the commission incurs related to those water utilities would have been spread by their revenues. That's it. That's the way the calculation works. With this law, we looked at, okay, let's take that bucket of costs. Let's take all those cost drivers and now say, all right, well, X number of the cases we did this past year, staff worked on, I'm just throwing these numbers out by way of example. Let's say 20% of the staff time was on investor-owned water utilities, and the rest of that water staff time was on COU utilities. Historically, we would have spread those across the board, but now what we're doing is saying, all right, how much is really investor-owned versus, so when we did that analysis, the investor-owned water utilities had $50,000 more in costs. Does that answer your question? Hopefully, that's kind of the way so we basically did a new allocation based on the time and the costs associated specifically with investor-owned versus consumer-owned. Did that help?
Sort of. I think I was looking for more of like the details of why they're consuming staff time. So like what's causing that time consumption?
Right. It's primarily the cases we receive from those utilities. So to use a dramatic example, if all of the water cases were investor owned, then virtually all of our costs would go, and our assessment, our corresponding assessment would go to those investor owned utilities. You know, every year is a little bit different. The volume of cases we receive is different every year. And that's a function of you know, the utility's requirements. If the utility, you know, especially if the small utility, I think I mentioned this earlier in another forum, you know, some of those utilities are run by, you know, volunteer trustees. They might have one FTE, they might have a consultant that does a lot of the work for them. And, you know, if they can keep rates the same, I think they're going to try to do that. And they're not going to come for a rate increase. So if they don't bring a case to us, we're not going to incur any costs. So it really is, and that's one of the points, I think the very last point I made on the presentation and in the report, that our caseload fluctuates from year to year. And it really truly is a function of the cases we receive from the utilities, and which, you know, virtually impossible to predict what that caseload is going to be.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Director Lanfear, I have a question on the sort of small utility versus large utility point. The slide that you shared with us that listed a number of smaller investor-owned water utilities. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Keyser Falls, that whole list, although they are different utilities, technically speaking, they're all actually owned by the same parent company, which is a holding company of a much larger multinational. Is that correct?
The bulk of them are. I don't believe they all are, though. I would have to get back to you on that. I'm not. So yes, several of those, all of the ones obviously listed the Maine Water Company and then a city or a town after they're all owned by Maine Water. I think Freiburg may be operated by Maine. I think they handle the operations. I'm not sure if Freiburg is owned by Maine Water, but I do believe they're operated by Maine Water. But I'm not 100% sure about that. So I guess I'd like to get back to you on the details there. I'm happy to do that.
Got it. And if it's not owned by Maine Water, but it is an investor-owned utility, then there would presumably be another company that is a for-profit that would hold the ownership of it.
Correct.
If that recollection is correct. So going back to Maine Water, can you describe to us the ownership structure of Maine Water?
I really can't. I'd have to get back to you on those details.
Mm-hmm. And there was a merger case with recently. I believe there was a company in Connecticut involved, and San Jose Water is the name that comes to mind.
Yes. Correct. I won't get the exact name correct either, but yes, there was a fairly a year or so ago merger related to Maine Water. You're correct.
And the PUC was not involved in that proceeding?
Oh no, we were involved. Yeah, we were direct. Yeah, that case came to us. Yep.
Because there was a change of ownership, so it required PUC approval.
Correct.
Got it. And my last question on that point is that part of the expenses that we're seeing here, or would that have been outside of the 4-month window?
I believe that would have been outside the window we looked at. I think that happened, I'm guessing more of 18 months to 2 years ago, but I'd have to confirm that for you.
That sounds right. Okay, thank you. Other questions or discussion from the committee? Well, Director Lanfear, thank you so much for coming before us. We look forward to tracking this over time and seeing how it does play out with a little bit more data, and really appreciate your taking this on.
Happy to help. Thank you.
All right. That concludes our work for today, everybody. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll reconvene on Thursday for some more fun. And Lindsay, anything else for us that you want to flag?
Nope, we're good for today.
Okay, excellent. Senator Lawrence, anything else?
I'm fine. Thank you for chairing today. You allowed me to actually be a lawyer today, so I appreciate it, Seth.
It is sometimes helpful not to be on the hot seat, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why I appreciate you, Senator Lawrence. Okay, so with that, we'll go about the rest of our business and see you all very soon. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.